All right, so get ready because we are about to dive deep into a career path that might just be perfect for any bookworms listening out there.
Mm-hmm.
We're taking a look at the life of a literary scholar.
Okay.
You've all sent in a ton of info from RoleCatcher, so I think it's pretty clear that you're not satisfied with just reading.
Yeah.
You want to like really get in there, right?
Agreement sound. Mm-hmm.
Explore the hidden depths, figure out how it all works, and really just dissect and debate everything.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's do it.
Absolutely.
What does a literary scholar even do?
So they really kind of, I think RoleCatcher says it, well, they describe them as like detectives of the literary world. But I always see it more as like an architect.
Oh,
Where you're really trying to like rebuild or like reconstruct the scaffolding
interesting.
of a novel or a poem or even an entire movement.
Wow, I like that a lot.
Yeah. So it's not even just reading between the lines. It's trying to understand like why those lines are even there in the first place.
So how do you become the architect? What does that path look like? Is it all like dusty libraries and tweed jackets?
I mean, there might be some of that depending on the specialization, but really it's like a blend of research and analysis and communication.
Okay.
So it's kind of like this three-pronged approach. So you've got to do the research right. You're looking at historical archives, critical essays, contemporary reviews, even things like fan interpretations.
Wait, fan interpretations, like that holds weight in academia.
Well, it's all about context, right? So like those fan theories, blog posts, those online discussions, they can actually offer really fascinating insights into how a work of literature resonates with readers across different cultures and different time periods.
Okay.
It's not about saying that those interpretations are right. It's more about understanding like the different viewpoints
I see.
and the different lenses that people use when they're reading.
That's fascinating. So it's not just the text itself, but it's the impact and how it's evolved as like a cultural conversation almost.
Exactly.
Okay, so then what? You've done all this research.
So then you've got to do the analysis right.
Right.
So that's where you connect the dots, you identify patterns, and you try to extract meaning from all of that research that you've done.
Okay.
So you might focus on a particular theme, you might focus on a historical period, you might even focus on just one author's like particular quirks.
So it's like very detail oriented.
It is.
It's like being a detective almost.
Yeah, exactly. Think of Sherlock Holmes. You would notice like a scuff mark on a shoe or a little bit of ink on a fingertip.
Right.
It's the same thing that literary scholars do, but they do it with language and symbolism and historical context and even like the rhythm of the writing.
So you've got the research, you've got the analysis. What's the final piece of the puzzle?
Communication.
Of course.
You've got to communicate those ideas to other people. And I'm not talking about writing some dusty dissertation that sits in the university archives. It's about publishing articles in journals, writing book reviews, maybe even doing a podcast.
Now you're speaking my language. But let's be honest, the image of a scholar kind of tucked away in an ivory tower that feels a little outdated, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, how does this actually translate to the real world? What are we talking about here?
Yeah, you're right. It's not all about like dusty bookshelves anymore.
Right.
Although I do personally love a good dusty bookshelf, but
Of course.
yeah, the beauty of this field is that it's always kind of evolving and changing, just like the literature that it's examining.
Okay.
So a literary scholar today could be researching how social media is influencing poetry.
Oh.
And then the next day, they're presenting those findings at a conference.
So it's like this balance between the research and then engaging with the rest of the world.
Exactly. You've got to share those interpretations.
Right.
And it really, I think, bridges the gap between like the quiet, solitary reading and then having these like big discussions.
Right.
But, you know, to do all of that requires a really specific set of skills.
Okay, so what are we talking about here? Like, what makes a good literary scholar? What are we looking for?
RoleCatcher really hits on this idea. And it's not just about reading all the classics.
Right.
It's about having a certain approach to like thinking and looking at the world.
Right.
And they say that critical thinking is essential for this.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's one thing to have an opinion on a book, but it's a whole other thing to be able to analyze it and explain why you think that.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
imagine you're in a seminar and you're talking about the end of The Great Gatsby.
Okay.
And you say, oh, Gatsby was doomed from the start.
Right.
But you have to be able to back that up.
Got it.
Why? What are the moments in the text that show that? How does that reflect what was happening at the time?
Like the historical context.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's critical thinking.
Okay, so critical thinking is important and then also probably writing right.
Absolutely, because you've got to be able to explain all this.
Yeah.
So RoleCatcher says that's like 70% of it is writing skills.
Well, and you're not just writing like an email.
No.
You're writing for publications.
Right, you're writing big research papers, maybe even grant proposals.
Oh, right, grants.
Yeah, you've got to get the money.
So you have to convince people, like, your research is important enough to get funded.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
you've got to sell it.
So you're a little bit of a salesperson.
A little bit, yeah.
Interesting.
You've got to sell your ideas.
Okay, so critical thinking, writing, and then also probably like public speaking and things like that.
For sure, because remember those conferences?
Yeah.
Imagine you're presenting to all these really smart people.
Yeah, I'd be so nervous.
Yeah, it's a big part of it.
Was there anything else in RoleCatcher's list of essential skills that kind of surprised you?
They talked a lot about learning strategies.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They did say that learning strategies are important.
Which at first I was like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, it sounds kind of vague.
Yeah, but they gave it like a 71% importance rating or something.
Wow. Okay, so it must be important.
Yeah, so I think it's really about being open to always learning new things.
Okay.
Because the world of literature never stops changing.
Of course not. New books are always coming out.
Exactly. New books, new ideas, new criticisms.
Right.
So you always have to be adapting.
So you have to be able to keep up with those trends and almost anticipate them.
Yeah, and not just read for fun.
Right, because this is your job.
Yeah, you're reading to understand how literature is changing and how it affects us.
Right. Okay, so this is all starting to make sense now.
Good.
But let's talk about the actual career path.
Okay.
So someone's listening to this and they're like, I want to be a literary scholar.
Yeah.
What do they do?
Well, like most academic jobs, it's not always easy.
Right.
RoleCatcher lays out like a typical path, though.
Okay.
And they say it starts with an entry-level position.
Okay, so like an apprenticeship almost.
Yeah, exactly, like an apprenticeship, where you're really
Right.
just there to support the more senior scholars.
Right, so you're doing a lot of the background work, the research.
Yeah, you're digging through archives, you're organizing bibliographies,
Yeah.
you're making copies, but really it's a chance to just learn how it all works.
Right, get your foot in the door.
Mm-hmm. Meet people.
Network.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've put in the work at the entry level.
Right.
What's next?
So then you usually move up to a junior scholar role.
Okay.
And that's where you get a little bit more freedom.
Okay.
You might start publishing your own research,
Oh, wow.
presenting at conferences,
I like it.
maybe even doing a little teaching.
So you're really like building up your reputation at that point.
Exactly.
Okay.
You're kind of like putting yourself out there.
So when you're publishing at that level, are we talking like full books or is it mostly like articles and things?
It's usually smaller stuff.
Okay.
Articles and journals, maybe contributing to a collection,
Okay.
that kind of thing.
So you're proving that you can do the research and you can write and you have something to say.
Yeah, you're showing that you understand what's going on in the field.
Right.
And that you can contribute to it.
Okay, so you've moved past the junior scholar level.
Right. So then you become a senior scholar.
Okay, senior scholar, now we're talking.
Now you're not just contributing. You're really shaping the conversation.
Wow.
You might be leading big research projects,
Right.
mentoring other scholars,
Right.
and publishing more prestigious stuff like a book.
Okay, so that's usually when people publish their first book.
Yeah, it could be.
Huh? Interesting.
It depends.
But RoleCatcher mentioned one more level even beyond senior scholar.
Right, principal scholar.
Principal scholar. What does that even mean? That sounds like the top of the top.
Yeah, that's like the big leagues.
Wow.
You're leading the really groundbreaking research.
Whoa.
You're collaborating with institutions all over the world. You might even be like consulting.
Wow, so you're like a celebrity almost
Kind of.
in the world of literary scholarship.
Yeah, you're like the go-to person.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's a long road to get there, though.
Okay, so let's talk about that road.
Oh.
Because it's one thing to want to be a literary scholar.
Right.
It's another thing to actually get the job.
Exactly, because it's really competitive.
Yeah.
But RoleCatcher had some good tips about the job market.
Okay, like what?
One of the biggest things was making sure your CV is tailored to the specific job you're applying for.
Oh, okay, so don't just send the same one to like 50 different places.
No, you really have to do your research on the role and the institution
Okay.
and highlight the parts of your experience that match what they're looking for.
So it's like writing a cover letter.
Exactly.
You have to explain why you're the perfect person for this specific job.
Exactly. You've got to sell yourself.
Right.
Show them you've done your homework.
Okay, and probably networking is a big one too.
Huge.
Yeah.
Because this is such a specialized field.
Right.
You've really got to put yourself out there, go to conferences, meet people.
And RoleCatcher has resources for that, right?
They do. They have lists of conferences and organizations, and they even have tools to help you find people to collaborate with.
That's incredible. It's like having a cheat sheet for academia.
Kind of. It's great.
Okay, so let's say you've gone to the conferences, you've made the connections, and you've landed an interview.
Okay.
What kind of questions are they asking in a literary scholar interview?
Well, don't expect them to just ask you to list your favorite books.
Right.
They're going to want to see how you think on your feet.
Okay, I like that.
One example that RoleCatcher gave was, can you talk about a recent piece of literary criticism that you found interesting or even that you disagreed with and explain why?
Oh, that's a good one.
Right.
Yeah, because it's not just about what you know, it's about how you think.
Exactly.
What else?
They also said they might ask, if you could create your dream course, what would it be and why?
Ooh, I love that question.
That's a good one.
It's not just about the books, it's about how you would teach and what you're passionate about.
Exactly.
Okay, so really it's about having that passion and showing that you're excited about literature.
Yeah, you have to love it
Okay.
because it's a lot of work.
It sounds like it, but also really rewarding.
Oh, for sure.
Well, this has been fascinating.
It has.
We've learned so much about literary scholars.
I know. I can't believe how much information we got just from those RoleCatcher resources.
I know, they're amazing.
It's incredible to have those tools.
Yeah, absolutely. And for our listeners, we'll be sure to link to all of that in the show notes.
Yes, definitely do that.
So if you're feeling inspired, go check it out.
Yeah, and as you're exploring all of this, think about this. If you could go back in time and give your younger self one piece of advice about this career path, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, something to think about.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of the literary scholar.
Of course, thanks for having me.
And to everyone listening, happy reading.